Despite having a seemingly successful inaugural season, LIV Golf still has a lot of work to do if it wants to be a mainstream entity in golf. In fact, if the league doesn't sign more high-profile players over the next few years, it could actually end up going under. So in today's video, we're going to talk about the Breakaway Tour's major goals to avoid financial crisis and more. Let's dive straight in. First up, LIV Golf sets targets for player signings. The Saudi League had a pretty great first season, all things considered. Not only did they manage to nab some of the PGA Tour's best talent like Cameron Smith and Dustin Johnson, but they also established themselves as one of the big players in the sport. Sure, they're not quite there in terms of actually competing against the Tour, plus they've been embroiled in controversy since day one too, but the fact remains that they've done a great job of kicking things off, so the only way from there should be up, right? After all, they're about to tee off their second season with a full league format, not to mention a TV deal probably in the works too. Well, turns out things aren't as simple as that, and to truly compete against the behemoths in the sport, LIV is gonna have to do a lot more than what it's doing right now. Wait a sec though, didn't Greg Norman say that they're in a great position heading into 2023? Yeah, he did, but then just how many times has he misled people over the past few years? You see, according to a leaked document that lists down the league's main objectives since its inception, they're nowhere near achieving any of their targets. One goal, for instance, pertains to high-profile signings and has 12 players on the list. Guess how many they've signed until now? Less than half. So, yep, the situation is kinda dire, and if things don't improve, then they could be in serious financial trouble. Up next, which players is LIV Golf looking to sign? Called Project Wedge, this leaked document comes from McKinsey & Company, which is the league's consulting firm, and while it lists down the players they need to sign for long-term sustainability, it's got a bunch of other very interesting stuff as well. Let's focus on the golfers though. The document states that to turn a profit by 2028, LIV Golf would have to sign 12 top players in the world. Now you might be wondering, what does top mean? Like, is it the official world golf ranking or something else entirely? Well, to be honest, no one really knows. Our assumption is that it's some sort of internal criteria that they've come up with, which in its nature is kind of similar to the PGA Tour's Player Impact Program. So you've got a mix of players who are really good at the game and those who are just, well, popular. And of course, that includes big names like Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy as well. Yeah, about that. Both of these stars have been super vocal against LIV Golf, so we're not sure if they'd want to switch sides at this point. In fact, Woods was apparently even offered an $800 million contract a couple of years ago, which he eventually turned down. That being said, they have managed to sign some of the players on the list, including Dustin Johnson, Brooks Koepka, Bryson DeChambeau, Cam Smith, and Phil Mickelson. So it's not all that bad, right? Well, turns out the story still goes deeper than that. Coming up, LIV Golf has to deal with startup costs. Okay, so remember how there was all this talk about how the Saudi leagues seemingly got unlimited funding and how they're just throwing money at people to sign them? Yeah, that wasn't actually the case at all. Of course, we're not saying that the investors have pulled out or anything like that. It's just that the league doesn't have an endless pit of cash. Apparently, the investors are ready to spend big as long as they're promised a return on their investment down the line. And for that to happen, LIV has got to sign these top stars. Now, the goal is to get these signings across the line over the next 3 to 4 years. That being said, if they're really serious about wanting someone like Woods or even McIlroy on board, they gotta hurry, because that $2 billion cash injection won't be available after 2025. To make matters worse, there aren't many sponsorship opportunities around either, which also inhibits their ability to generate revenue. Just how much cash do they need to make though? Well, even before we talk about getting into the green in terms of making profits, they need to recoup their costs first. And if you just look at the amount of money they've burned in the first year alone, that figure comes to around $2 billion. So yeah, that's a lot of ground to make up. Without sponsorships, TV rights deals, or big-name players, however, it could all get a bit too tricky for Greg Norman's side. Now for how bad could things get for LIV? Let's talk about these apparent financial issues now that could arise as a result of missing these targets. Currently, the Saudi League basically makes no money at all because, again, no TV deals or sponsorships. Not to mention, their massive prize pools or contracts aren't sustainable either, at least not without hundreds of millions pouring in from the Saudi investment fund. Oh, and then there's the issue of attracting viewership as as well, which was really mediocre during the inaugural season. Still, let's assume Greg Norman doesn't manage to bring Woods, McIlroy, or any of the top 12 players for that matter. What would happen? Well, according to the leaked report, LIV Golf could end up losing $355 million per year by 2028. And it doesn't take a genius to figure out that if a business has been losing this much cash for 6 years in a row, then it's probably time to pack things up and go home. But hey, there's the other possibility too, right? Like, what if it all comes together and they do manage to reach their goals? What's the difference in that case? Well, in that case, they would be making almost $1.4 billion per year by 2028, which is absolutely massive. In fact, those profit numbers would easily be enough to obliterate the PGA Tour, whose entire revenue stands at around $1.6 billion. So yeah, they've got some very lofty ambitions. Moving on, Greg Norman opens up about Justin Thomas. Speaking of high-profile signings, Justin Thomas is also one of those players who have been on LIV Golf's radar for a very long time now. Though, much like Rory McIlroy or Tiger Woods, JT also doesn't seem to be interested in joining the league. Well, at least that's what we've been led to believe anyway, because yep, Greg Norman's opened another Pandora's box with a sensational statement. In an interview with Bunkered magazine, the LIV chief opened up about his league's future plans regarding player signings. And according to him, nothing had really changed in terms of the number of people they want to bring in. Now, if you remember, he's previously mentioned how he wants to make at least 7 more signings during Season 2 of his league, so this new info tracks. Here's the kicker though. He said that he's already talked to Thomas, and apparently the golfer isn't as against the breakaway circuit now as he used to be back in the day. He talked about how he and another member of his team sat down with JT and gave him the full presentation about their business model and their future ambitions. The Aussie then also added that if you notice Justin's public attitude toward LIV Golf, it's changed a lot over the past few months. And to be fair, there is some truth to that, because up until June, it really felt like Thomas genuinely hated the breakaway league. In fact, at the RBC Canadian Open, he went as far as to say that LIV's taking pros away from the great storylines of the tour. Following up, Norman's door is open for everyone. Now, it's a bit tricky to nail down exactly where Justin Thomas is at in terms of his position on the LIV and PGA Tour feud. Like only a few months ago, he really seemed bummed about the whole thing. Plus, even during the President's Cup, he said that he doesn't miss the league's members not being a part of the tournament. That being said, we really haven't heard much from him since. So maybe Norman's actually worked his magic on JT? Well, I guess we'll have to find out over the next few months, won't we? After all, just how many golfers have switched sides merely weeks after ranting about the breakaway circuit? The list is honestly way too long. There is another golfer that Norman mentioned in his interview though, and that is of course Rory McIlroy. The Irishman's been an elusive figure for LIV since its inception, but signing him might prove to be even harder than Tiger Woods, all because he's engaged in a feud against Greg Norman himself. The two have been having this fiery back and forth for years at this point, and we really don't see anything that could put an end to it. With that said, despite the fact that Rory has sort of become his arch rival in this whole issue, Norman was still gracious enough to say that his door is still open for anyone who wants to join him, whether that's McIlroy, JT, or someone else entirely. Finally, the next 12 months are crucial for LIV. Yep, it's as simple as that. This is a make-or-break situation for Greg Norman's side right now. Oh, and there's trouble at the top of his league too, as two very important executives, Atul Khosla and Matt Goodman, have recently resigned from their positions. Not to mention the situation doesn't seem to be improving on the sponsorship or TV deal front either. So all eyes are now on the Great White Shark, as he's got to deliver and sign some big names before the start of the season to really bring momentum back on his side. If there's one thing he's got that gives him the upper hand, it's his silver tongue, as he really seems to pull miracles out of nowhere when it comes to convincing golfers. That's a wrap for this video. Do you think LIV will make any high-profile signings before the start of its second season? Let us know in the comments below. Make sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more videos like this. See you in the next one.